2025 has been a giant year for technology, especially with continuing advances in artificial intelligence. So much so that Time magazine named the architects of AI, the leaders of the biggest companies in the industry, as Person of the Year. Mark New takes a look back on the highlights in tech.
They look like ordinary video clips, but many get far more dramatic and simply hard to believe. That's because everything about the videos, the people, the characters, sounds, music, and script have all been generated from a single command prompt. OpenAI's Sora introduced advanced generative AI video making this year, and many believe Google's Gemini has taken it even further, allowing anyone with a computer to blur the lines between reality and fiction.
They left behind a...
Another explosive area of tech was AI agents, autonomous digital workers that can do everything from customer service to writing code. Haoran Zhou showed me how AI agents at her company, Hey Boss AI, can build websites for customers in minutes. She even stepped down as CEO to hand over the reins of her company to an AI CEO named Astra. AI is also moving into the physical world in the form of a humanoid robot, a field where Chinese and U.S. companies are leading the charge.
The question is it going to be the form factor of the future? Do they do enough valuable work to not just be a sideshow?
AI and humanoid robots have advanced in large part due to the companies that build the AI chips and data centers that satisfy the incredible compute power demand. That's why in October, NVIDIA became the first company in history to reach a market capitalization of $5 trillion. CEO pay also hit historic levels when in November, Tesla's board voted to give CEO Elon Musk a performance-based pay package that could be worth nearly $1 trillion. One of Musk's targets is getting Tesla's self-driving Cybercab into mass production so it can pick up customers across the country in 2026. But they'll have to play catch-up to Alphabet-owned Waymo, whose robotaxis have already expanded to 5 U.S. cities and just started driving on highways in cities like Los Angeles. But this year's self-driving technology literally aimed higher. Chinese company Xpeng's electric vertical takeoff landing aircraft, or eVTOL, can lift off from wherever its mothership vehicle transports it to.
10, maybe 15 years down the road, I believe you will see highways in the sky. There will be hundreds, thousands of these aircraft flying in individual cities, and it will truly change the way our cities are even built.
2025 could be the year that set the stage for a technological revolution that takes customers and passengers into uncharted territory with AI as their guide. Mark New, CGTN, San Francisco.
To discuss the shift to electric cars, let's bring in our panelist from Shanghai. Haoran Zhou is founder of Telescope, a YouTube channel focusing on the Chinese car market. And from Detroit, John McElroy is an analyst of the auto industry with the media company Autoline Daily. Haoran, one of my exciting moments from a little over a year ago is driving around in cars with you. We got to test drive a lot of different EVs, from the economical to the really exciting, expensive versions, everything in between. And one of the things you focused on wasn't just the cars themselves, but the technology. It's very important. Talk to us about that and how it's driving this market.
One of the cars we drove together, you remember we tested a huge MPV to show off the autonomous driving. That car has already gone through another facelift. So the technology, the car itself has gone through another iteration during the last time we met and now. So that's the pace we're talking about, not just the physical side of the car, but the chip. That car is running an in-house chip developed by the manufacturer itself. And the software architecture have gone through a generational leap. It's now written in a completely different structure to the software we experienced about a year and a half ago. So that's the kind of progress we're talking about. You thought, Mike, you might thought you've just experienced the bleeding edge, but it's about 2.5 generations behind now, I would say.
And it's not just the chips, which you're pointing out, but these cars, they're just flying off the assembly lines. I mean, 2 out of every 3 electric vehicles sold in the world were from China. Talk to us about the growth of this marketplace as well.
The growth this year has more of a focus on the export because we see manufacturers like Chery and BYD really took off in terms of export volume. Domestically, it's a slightly different story. We sort of plateaued a little bit, and with the subsidy policy tapering off towards the end of the year, Q4 is not going to be as smooth of a ride as everyone thought it was going to be. You know, in previous years, Q4 is normally in terms of volume, the biggest season, the biggest quarter. But this year, slightly different. So, but internationally speaking, export-wise, yes, BYD is taking off big time in Europe, and also let's not forget in the global South, the South American market, Africa, and also the Middle Asia, so-called.
John, let's talk about, we'll use euphemisms from the industry. You know, one's going forward, the other seems to be going in reverse. And of course, that's the United States. Seems to be moving away from this. President Trump obviously getting rid of the incentives for buying electric cars, also talking about shifting significantly to weaken the fuel efficiency requirements for tens of millions of new cars and light trucks. Ford already is signaling kind of a move away from EVs. Talk to us about what's happening in the U.S. market.
Sure. Unfortunately, in the U.S., the electric vehicle has become highly politicized. You know, Democrats are fully in favor of it. Republicans are completely against it. And when the Democrats were in power, we saw the administration, the Biden administration, put in very generous incentives to buy EVs, to manufacture the batteries to build the plants. And now the Trump administration has come in and kicked that all away. And undoubtedly, when the Democrats take power again at some point in the future, who knows when, the pendulum will swing back again. So it's very unfortunate that an automotive technology has become so highly politicized.
And that yo-yo effect, what do you see as the long-term, problems with that?
Well, we don't see any resolution to that whatsoever right now. Hopefully, at some point, cooler heads will prevail because, we just saw Ford announce nearly a $20 billion write-off to its EV program, and it's simply not sustainable for the industry. I think we're going to see more write-offs from other companies coming too, and it's affecting the supplier industry as well. So at some point, we're going to have some sort of recognition that we got to take the politics out of these regulations and come up with things that the industry can deal with.
Haoran, Stuart Taylor is a former Ford executive. I'm reading from his notes. He's in a consulting firm now, but he said the migration to EVs, which most of the industry sees as inevitable, is now running in two different timelines. You see what's going on in China, but you see the U.S. strategies. And how do you view these two different approaches? Because obviously, you got the gas-guzzling cars, and then you got the EVs.
I will say, don't just. I agree that Ford's $20 billion write-off is a huge blow to the industry. But I would also like to remind people to read a press release about Ford just recently announced they're shifting to range extenders for the F-150s, the pickup trucks for North American market. I mean, that will prepare people to understand why the future of mobility, even for pickup trucks, will be increasingly electrically powered, powered by electric motors, maybe not necessarily by batteries just yet. I mean, the American consumers may have learned the hard way that the pure electric drivetrain is just not quite ready for cars that they're used to, for trucks they're used to. They're just not quite powerful enough to power trucks that the North American consumers are familiar with. But with range extenders, they will see the benefit. And with the electric drivetrain technology, hopefully gradually maturing in the next few years, people who have bought range extenders and knew what electrically powered vehicles are like, when they purchase their next vehicle, are much more likely to go for the BEV cars than people who've never experienced what it's like.
John, it's interesting. There's a video on your website, Autoline, where there was a discussion with automakers talking about investing billions of dollars in EVs, but the consumers aren't showing up. Is this because of the political dimension you're talking about? Why is it the adaption's happening in other parts of the world, but not so much here in the U.S.?
Yeah, well, look, I would say actually Americans overall are not against EVs. In fact, about 1.3 million EVs have been sold in the United States in 2025. And I think what many consumers are waiting for, not all of them, but millions of them, literally, so the market research shows, they want EVs that are more affordable, that have better driving range, and they want to see more of a public infrastructure built out so that they can charge when they're not at home. Those things are coming. They're not here yet. In about 2 years' time, you're going to see new, very affordable EVs from Ford and General Motors. And I think you'll start to see the EV segment start to climb back again at that point. But as Haoran was just talking about, when it comes to the full-size SUV or pickup market, those vehicles are used to haul heavy loads. They're used to haul or to tow heavy trailers, and you just don't get very far if you only have a battery electric vehicle, unless the battery is massive, which adds a lot of weight, a lot of cost, and takes a lot longer to recharge. And that's why that segment was probably not a smart one to get into with EVs. It looks like smaller cars with smaller batteries is the way to go, and we're going to start to see that in a couple of years in the U.S. market.
Well, Haoran, I did have the pleasure of spending a day with you driving around in all these vehicles, but I'm a rarity in the United States because even though as you point out, these cars are selling in China, in Europe, the global South, you can't get your hands on them here in the U.S. unless, of course, you are Jim Farley, the CEO of Ford. Here's what he has to say about driving around in a Chinese vehicle.
I don't like talking about the competition so much, but I drive the Xiaomi. We flew one from Shanghai to Chicago, and I've been driving it for 6 months now, and I don't want to give it up.
I don't want to give it up. What's your take on that?
I think it's quite unfortunate that President Trump has put such a political angle on electric vehicles, where the United States has excellent entrepreneurs like Elon Musk, like Jim Farley, who are opening their eyes to what's happening in China. So I would just like to suggest that President Trump talk to the great entrepreneurs, American entrepreneurs, and listen to what they've seen. And it's actually in his interest to. I know he's taking a step backwards on the electric vehicles, but if he can just talk to his experts on electric vehicles, who many of them led the world in the EV adoption, maybe he will have a slightly different view.
All right, I want to give both of you, we don't have much more time left, but I want to give each of you a crack at these flying vehicles. Everybody's talking about that, autonomous vehicles and then flying vehicles. John, I'll give you a first crack at this. Where do you see that going, and what's the future look like?
No, the future is very bright for VTOLs. They call them vertical takeoff or landing. I refer to them as passenger drones, but the people that are making those things, they don't like calling them drones. They call them VTOLs. I think the future is bright, especially in congested areas, traffic congestion. I think we're going to see a lot. It's already starting to happen. The public's not quite yet aware of it. For example, at the Los Angeles Olympics, Summer Olympics coming up, I think you're going to see a lot of VTOL activity, which is going to get headlines around the world. But the race is on. There's a lot of automotive interest in VTOLs as well, not just from the aerospace companies, but it's the next big step in mobility.
Haoran, I want to get your thoughts as well.
Yes, XPeng is already talking about once they start mass producing this kind of VTOLs, they will instantly become the biggest airplane manufacturer in the world, which is slightly cheeky if you're comparing yourself to companies like Boeing, who makes passenger airlines. But anyway, it is going to be a huge revolution. But I'm slightly more interested in the technologies that gets passed down from these VTOLs, because these planes are a lot more weight sensitive compared to cars. And the technologies like the batteries and the drivetrains and all of the technologies will gradually trickle down to electric vehicles, which currently, let's admit, weight is a huge problem. especially if you want the North American market to get fully battery electric pickup trucks, they need to get lighter. And I believe the push behind getting the batteries lighter is so much bigger for the electric planes because they are that much more weight sensitive.
Yeah, still some things that need to be ironed out, but it sure is exciting looking at the landscape in the future. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your insights. Really appreciate it. Let's focus our discussion now on another big tech segment in 2025, the development of artificial intelligence. We welcome from Palo Alto, California, Amr Awadallah. He is founder and CEO of Vectara, a generative AI company. And from Beijing, Shaoshan Liu is director of Embodied AI at the Shenzhen Institute of Artificial Intelligence and Robotics for Society. Amr, why don't I start with you? Times Magazine, of course, comes out, selects the architects of artificial intelligence as Person of the Year for 2025. What was your reaction to that?
I think it's very justified. There is no question that AI advanced a lot in 2025, though I would still refer to 2025 as a hype correction year. Coming out of 2024, a lot of people were hyping that by the end of 25 we would have AGI, we'll have AI that figured out everything. That did not happen. So I think we have some correction from that perspective. But the models advanced significantly, especially when it comes to software development, meaning coding, video generation, image generation, even 3D world generation advanced a lot throughout 2025. So there has been lots of solid advances, but still below the hype that we were expecting for this year.
Yeah, there was a lot of hype. Why not the kind of the broad buy-in, do you think?
I don't know. I from a buying perspective, I think the world is buying in. I mean, my mom is 80 years old and she uses AI now every day, asking it about her health and many other topics. So I think in terms of adoption, when it comes to consumers, AI certainly has been adopted everywhere and people are using it significantly. As you might know, ChatGPT is approaching 1 billion active weekly users, which is amazing to happen in just 2 years since they came out. But on the business side, yes, there has been some resistance in adopting AI at the proper speed. And that's because AI has because it's newer technology that we just developed in the recent years, especially things like ChatGPT, it does have still some quirks that need to be figured out. So I think that's kind of the reason why businesses has been slower. But this year, 2025, businesses started adopting AI in very significant ways. So I see this as the beginning of that. And 2026 is really the year of the launch.
And Shaoshan, you spend a lot of time in what people refer to as the Silicon Valley of China. What are some of the technological advances that caught your eye this year? What are some of the things we should keep our eye out for?
Well, I think embodied AI is the key word here, especially in the Great Bay Area, Shenzhen, or the area around Shenzhen. Hardware supply chain has always been the strength. And then now you combine the hardware supply chain with the LLM capability from the software side. You can build robots that can deliver food, that can carry out very many different tasks. For example, a drone. Today, if you are in Shenzhen, you can order food from a drone. And then you have humanoid robots dancing on the stage and so on and so forth. There's so many applications popping out in the past year.
Well, adaptation, it's interesting. You know, Amr talked about how it is being adopted, but when I go to China, it seems like it's much more rapid adaptation. I mean, you go to hotels, there's robots all over the place. You don't see that so much here in the U.S. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think, first of all, there are several reasons. Of course, the government supports it. It supports the integration of AI into everyday lives. And then the business are pushing, invest a lot into the development of AI technologies. For example, Meituan has spent a lot of resources onto their drone efforts. And then their startup ecosystem working on just what you mentioned, the hotel delivery robots. So if we examine the usage cases in China and versus the rest of the world, China is leading by far.
Amr, what about your take on that? Why do you think there is this kind of disparity when you're here in the U.S. versus China?
In terms of the adoption of robotics in businesses?
Yeah.
I think it's a couple of things. First, it is the government themselves being very, very supportive of it and want to see it happen at a faster speed. And to be honest, it's also the cost. Like the robotics systems that are being developed in China, the cost point for them are meeting the needs of what the use cases for deploying them justify. And that's why they're taking off quicker. Here, the cost for robotics is still very high, and I think China has an advantage there. So I would say that that is playing a big part of that.
Well, let me ask you a follow-up on that, because it's so interesting. We hear so much about the possibility of a bubble here in this country, you know, people pouring in money, and then all of a sudden there's no payoff at the end, kind of like the dot-com bubble, and boy, it's going to crater the economy. You hear all this doomsaying. I want to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think there is lots of similarities between what we're seeing now versus what we saw in the bubble of the internet in 2000. There is no question, there is lots of analogies and lots of similarities in terms of the massive deployments of infrastructure. Like back then in 2000, it was the massive deployment of fiber optics and network switching all around the world, and some companies overextended themselves, and that led to their demise. And investors also, because of the hype and the irrational exuberance around the bubble, invested in many things that turned out not to be worth the investment that they deserve. But nobody would question for a second that the internet itself, being born in 2000, was 100% justified to be something we should be excited about. Otherwise, I would not be having this conversation with you right now from my home, right? So nobody would question that. And I think I think the same effect is happening here, meaning that, yes, 20 years from now, we're going to look back at this moment and say, yes, this was justified 100%. But at the same time, during these bubble phases, hype phases, there's lots of wrong bets that get made, and some people will lose money because of that. But in the grand scheme of things, this is going to be a positive wave of technology. There is no question in my mind around that.
And Shaoshan, let's talk a little bit more about what he just said. You know, 20 years from now, we'll look back on this golden age, if you will. But let's not even go 20 years. I mean, you're talking about embodied AI. Tease that out for us. What does that look like a couple years from now, 5 years from now? What do you see?
Well, we will see many different forms of robots taking over human jobs in a way. For example, you already see hotel delivery robots. You already see Meituan delivery robots, drones, and so on. Then you will start seeing factory robots to do industrial jobs, manufacturing, and so on and so forth. And then you see robotic mowers to cut your grass. So there are many different form factors. There will be an explosion of form factors due to the software advantage and then the hardware supply chain. Then you will see robot integrating into our daily lives more and more. Then at the very end, you might see a humanoid. Humanoid is just one form factor. That's against the mainstream view that humanoid will be the ultimate form factor. But my personal take that you will see many different form factor robots integrating into your life, each tailored to a special purpose.
I see you nodding your head. I want to get your thoughts as well.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. There's going to be many form factors of robots. The humanoid form factor is exciting because of sci-fi movies, and we see it and so on. And it does have some advantages in the sense that the world was made for humans. So if you make something that looks like human, then it should be interact with the world a bit easier. But no, if you think about purpose-built robotics, it makes a lot more sense. Like if I have a Waymo, like a self-driving car that drives itself, I don't necessarily want to see like a humanoid robot sitting in the driver's seat. Like I don't need that. If I have a Roomba cleaning my carpets and my floor, it doesn't need to look like a full human cleaning the carpet. It's like it's purpose-built for that task, and it can do that very well. So I agree that we're going to have a hybrid world where we'll have for some tasks, there are going to be purpose-built robots just for that task that do it very well. But there's still going to be room for the general purpose humanoid robot that can do many things.
Now, you're out in Palo Alto where we're seeing so much of this tech development occurring. And, you know, there's been a lot of talk here in the United States about guardrails when it comes to AI. And some say, well, slow down the technology and that sort of thing. But you even hear the CEO of Google's DeepMind AI lab saying, we don't know enough about AI yet to quantify the risk. But in my view, there is significant risk. And yet hear the President of the United States talk about this. We'll play the sound. I want to get your thoughts on the other side.
AI, which is taking over the world. I don't know what you're doing here. I hope you're right. All I can say is we both hope you're right.
I don't know what you're doing here. I hope you're right. Is that the way to handle this sort of thing?
No, guardrails are important. There's no question about that, and we need to have guardrails in place. And I know we should not just be winging it and depending on people figuring it out the right way. We should have some sort of regulations and guardrails around the technology, because we also need to learn from our past. Is we have seen when we let businesses just do business, they sometimes optimize themselves, which might be damaging for the citizens, right? So social media, for example, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all of these kind of technologies, there's no question they have so much value. They have so much connectivity to our lives, connecting us to people far away from us in ways we have never thought possible before. But at the same time, they had some addictive aspects of them that had, or self-image also aspects of them that were very damaging in nature, that if the government was involved earlier, it would have stopped these things from propagating. Like, for example, what Australia is doing now, where I think they put a new law saying kids below 16 cannot use social media. So no, the government still has a role to play to keep an eye on how business is staying in terms of doing these things in an ethical way that's not damaging for the citizens.
And Shaoshan, how does China view this as far as guardrails, regulations?
Well, I think the whole world's focus has been on the U.S.-China tech competition. So either side is trying to win the competition. But I think the challenge is the same in the United States and in China. Regulations way behind technological advancements. We should spend more time thinking about and developing laws on guardrails and technology on guardrails. So I think it's the same situation.
Well, you know, you talk about guardrails. The other concern that you hear a lot of, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is, you know, unemployment. You know, if we've got robots running around everywhere, they're going to take my job, that sort of thing. It's a major concern. Is it warranted, Shaoshan?
Well, I think it's a legit concern. Then robots will take over jobs. But as a first step in our society, we should learn how to work with machine learning technology. We should work with robots, using them as tools for now, instead of worrying them taking over your jobs. I think this has happened many times before during Industrial Revolution. The horse riders, their jobs are taken by the cars. In the IT revolution, it's the same thing. The typewriters, their jobs were taken by computers. So I think the first step is to build human resilience such that we can work with AI first, then think about how to deal with their problems later.
Amr, not a lot of time. Give us the positive spin on all of this. It is going to make our lives better in some respects, right?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I mean, in many, many fields, in health, discovering new types of medicines, in education, each one of our kids having their own amazing teacher, teaching them in the way they understand. In every area around us, there is no question about it. But we have to have the proper guardrails and the proper regulations to avoid the negatives that might come out of it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your insights. Really appreciate it. That's going to do it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Mike Walter in Washington, D.C.